What's good, folks? Welcome to another edition of the Cover One Film Room, the show that gives you the hows and the whys behind both the good and the bad of the Buffalo Bills. I am one of your two hosts, Anthony Prohaska, joined as always by Erik Turner, and we are back here
Finally.
in the film room. Yep, we had a couple weeks off because Erik wanted to be selfish and go on vacation.
Needed a little sun. It was a long winter, all right?
It was a long winter. But it's always nice too, like, right? That was such a well-timed vacation, like the draft finished. So you finally get to breathe because it's such a, especially now, and this is going to sound so like, well, look, oh, boo-hoo, but like we've talked about on the show before, but the Bills playing longer into the playoffs pushes back our draft prep and our free agency prep. And then both of those things are like monsters in and of themselves. So you finish the grunt of the regular season and the playoffs, but then you get right into free agency prep, which carries right into draft prep. And then the draft happens. So it's nice for the draft to happen. And you can just take a breath and be, you know what? I'm going to go to a beach and I'm going to breathe for a couple weeks. So yeah, welcome back. You're a little sun kiss there from the weather on vacation, but yeah, welcome back. Hope your vacation was good.
It was great. You know, it was just the wife and I went to Puerto Rico for about 7 or 8 days. Little rainy. I will say it was a little rainy this year. But we got some glimpses of the sun, as you can see, for a few hours to start each day, and then the rain would move in. But it was nice to get away, to unwind. Honestly, I didn't watch any film on vacation. Isn't that crazy? No
That's
film.
wild.
Yeah, totally unplugged when it came to that. And obviously now I'm coming back. I'm like, I'm so behind. I'm so behind the 8 ball now because you have all these, the guys they drafted, but also the undrafted guys that they're bringing in, stuff like that. So excited to be back, excited to get back into the swing of things. And we're going to cover some of the rookie stuff, some of those rookies, some of those undrafted free agents today in the film room.
Yeah, we're going to get, as you were speaking, I was thinking of because I stayed a little bit more plugged in, still doing disguised coverage, but I also kind of took the opportunity to be like, I'm going to breathe a little bit too, because I'm waxed. But yeah, I feel like if I don't do anything for a day, I'm like, oh my God, I'm behind. Yep. And yeah, especially with, all the work we did the day of the draft or draft weekend and the content we put out and various feedback we got on various players. It's nice to get into this part now of the offseason schedule, Erik, where even though it's very light right now, where we're not into official training camp time and preseason time, but it's nice to start to see things starting to come together and everything kind of coalescing into one. We have the schedule released this week, and that coincides with Rookie Minicamp and all of these little breadcrumbs and beats that start to put us towards real snaps when the pads come on, even though there is value when the pads aren't on. But when we get real snaps moving us towards meaningful football in 2025, these practices for Rookie Minicamp really are kind of like the first step in a long line of things that really push us towards the actual start of regular season football for the new season.
Yeah, and I know there's only so much that can be gleaned from these practices, especially when you consider they had 3 practices and the media was only able to attend the first day. So you're cramming in a lot of content, narratives, storylines, discussions, and topics, into that one practice. Was probably 20 minutes worth of, recording from the media and the local beat guys. But I did still find it interesting. Some of the things that did happen, and it's not necessarily really, X and O's driven, scheme driven, but what Rookie Minicamp shows, not just the coaches, not just the people that cover the team, it shows everyone that the movement skills, right? And so, we watch a ton of film, but there's only so many things you can glean from that, high camera angle, and it's, zoomed in on them as much as you can. And so watching these video cut-ups from practice and, some of the discussions surrounding, I thought it was very interesting to, kind of talk about, to start, Max Hairston and Dorian Strong, because the one thing that popped on film, and again, it's only drills, the one thing that popped on film was that elite athleticism and fluidity.
Yeah, it was especially when there's a couple reps of him doing drill work. I think Jordan Hancock is the other person who we're also going to talk about in this episode. And you can just see even the difference in how they break down, their feet, their lower body, the juice. And it's nice to start to see, actual actual pieces again like come together. I also like seeing how the guys show up from a size perspective.
Yeah.
We get this initial piece, and then like when we see him in training camp, it's like, okay, did anybody add on more muscle? Did they lose a little bit? Did they drop down? How are they changing a bit? And it's good to get that initial impression. And yeah, like you said, when it comes to Max Hairston, so much has been talked about the electricity that he has and the athlete that he has, and being arguably, not just from a defensive back perspective, one of the most athletic dudes in this entire like
Yeah.
class player, like across all positions, with the juice and electricity that he has and the burst and the twitch that's very real. And yeah, we got to see that along with some of that fluidity in his lower body, especially the feet, the hips, the ankles. He's just a really clean athlete, especially from the waist down. Again, we didn't get a ton of like battling reps that we got.
Right.
You got to see the movement, and it's a very, very, very tiny piece, but it's nice to kind of see that, especially when he's juxtaposed with other players at his position doing drills at the same time. You can see the difference in terms of the level of athlete that he is.
It's cool to see side by side Dorian Strong and Max Hairston because of their style of play, their experience or, lack of experience, and what they do well versus what they don't do well. And what these two players side by side, we're going to compare them their entire career because of the position they play, how the Bills double dipped, and again, their play style. And I found it very interesting. They're dynamic. It's so cool, man. Obviously, they're competing for a position at the same position, and they're out there. You see Dorian Strong doing a lot of almost coaching up Max Hairston, like really kind of teaching him and taking him under his wing. And you got to think about Dorian Strong played a lot of games, 5 years at Virginia Tech, 1,443 coverage snaps, 1,300 plus were in press.
And that's a team of Virginia Tech who takes their defensive football very, very seriously.
I mean, Dorian Strong played in 52 games to Max Hairston's 32. And so a lot of press in that scheme. Hairston, think about this, 558 coverage snaps in his career, only 179 in press. And we always differentiate press, jam. Dorian Strong played press jam.
Yes.
He's very good with his hands, and we're going to show some of those clips later.
He wants to beat you up.
He does. He wants to get physical with you at the line of scrimmage. And I found it so interesting because you have Hairston, who, again, is very good in zone coverage, played zone man coverage 16% last year. So he didn't play a lot of man coverage reps, but obviously we talked about it when we broke him down. He's got the ability, and especially the footwork and the feet and the speed and athleticism. He has all that stuff checked. But it's interesting to see him paired with Strong because Strong can now drop some of those nuggets on how to play at the line of scrimmage physically with hands, not just mirroring with the feet like Max Hairston is used to doing.
It's so funny because if you could, and both players are fine on their own. I don't want to make it seem like it's not, but if you could like fuse the two into one, man, like if you could put the juice and athleticism into Strong, or put like Strong's experience and technique and brain into Hairston, it would be.
He wouldn't be going 30th overall, right?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And that's a really funny piece put together. Strong ticks. We talked so much on the show about Trey Amos, who also did. I don't know if you noticed it while you were on break. Part of the reason Amos fell, there's a back injury that came out for him during the draft process. It contributed to a slide a little bit there, which makes sense. Interesting. But we talked so much about wanting. We want to restrict airspace. We want to squeeze windows. And part of what we wanted was, more press and more press man and, ability to reroute guys and all the disruption that comes with it. And you get that in Strong. Yeah. But you just get a little, not even a little bit, a lot less in that athletic profile versus a guy like Hairston because he's such a top tier athlete. And it's so funny to see them go with Strong late because Hairston is this juiced up athletic profile guy that they really don't gear towards. But he's also strong in zone, which they do gear towards. And then you've got Strong, who is the press man kind of guy that we wanted. Not this amazing athlete like they typically gravitate towards, but he's got experience. He comes from a good system. He's got that pedigree at Virginia Tech. Again, we talked about the high level of defense and how much they value that side of the ball there. And then, just the technique. And he has to be on point with that technique because he does not have the athletic gifts that Hairston has. One of the pieces we talked about with Hairston is, you'll watch him get fooled or get beat, and he just recovers because he's got that speed. Dorian Strong doesn't have that kind of recovery speed. He doesn't have that. He doesn't have that margin for error like Hairston does. So it'll be cool to kind of see them pick each other's brain and also maybe play off of one another as they develop going forward. And also a little nugget too, I believe they train together this
Yes.
offseason, which is cool. So they have a cool relationship, which is nice to see two rookies, coming in and kind of having one another for that.
It was awesome. It had, Hairston had a quote in a presser after that first day, and he says, "I'm taking mental reps when I watching Strong, of course, him go out there, play with poise, and play like he's already adjusted. Like that was good to see. Again, poise. I think that is one of the things I highlighted. It's in bold print in my scouting report of Dorian Strong, because again, he's got all that experience. He's played in a very complex robber type system that kind of matches what the Bills like to use. And then again, the amount of reps he's played, especially with what we think the Bills are trying to do with playing more press and maybe more press jam. And so when he said that, and then when you watch this video from Dan Fates, it really just it's cool to see again, because they're competing against each other. And, they obviously they want to be the best at that position and beat one of another. But you still see Dorian Strong, really mentoring Hairston on this play. And I love what they're doing here. So you see him up at the line of scrimmage. Dorian Strong is the corner here. And you see Hairston kind of pointing to each side, and he's changing his footwork, right foot up now, and then he switches left foot up. And it looks to me like he's talking about releases based on the footwork, just little things like that, because that will change what hand you're jamming with, what hand you're attacking, what hips you're opening up with. It changes the entire approach. And so you see Dorian Strong, as they do one little rep here, you'll see him initially, the wide receiver, Hairston, goes outside, and you see that inside hand jam by Strong. And then you see the swipe. Hairston's trying to swipe it with the inside hand. Then watch the right hand of Dorian Strong and watch the feet of Strong and hips and how he immediately swivels. Now he gets his right hand inside. Look at the punch. Look at the placement. Again, this is just walkthrough, but these are the different techniques that Dorian Strong is well versed in, that Hairston really just relied on his footwork in college and his speed. Now he's trying to, pass on some of those nuggets and some of that technique to Max Hairston.
This one's such a good, you freeze frame that so well there. Like you see the stab there kind of in the midsection. Look where Dorian Strong's eyes are. Like he's kind of essentially, not even kind of, like he's essentially walking him through, like, this is what you want to do from an eye standpoint, from a hand standpoint, from a feet standpoint. And it's so cool to have a guy. It's cool to have them have this type of relationship already on day one, where they're comfortable with one another, being like, hey, let's just go like work on some stuff after. And for Hairston to have a guy this experienced and this much of a vet like Dorian Strong. And again, this is the type of person, not to downplay Dorian Strong's athletic ability, but this is the type of guy you want to learn technique from, because he relies on his technique. And if he succeeds at the NFL level, it's going to be because of that technique. He's not this plus level athlete. He's not juiced up like Hairston. I like the little foot fire there from Hairston. At his speed, it makes you want to be like, hey man, do you want to go run some like 9 routes on offense? Do you want to run some because they could use some speed at the wide receiver spot. But yeah, it's cool to see this already. And it's cool to see Hairston wanting to pick Strong's brain, because like you alluded to a little earlier here before we got into that film clip there, we talked about Hairston's ability in man and in press, but more from an athletic profile projection standpoint. We've seen glimpses of it, but it's more of what the profile projects to. It's nice to see him already trying to put some of the technique breadcrumbs together so he can pair that with the athletic profile. And again, to learn from a guy with the technique and the precision and the experience within the technique and precision of Dorian Strong, that's just really invaluable from a dude already, like just getting his feet wet at rookie minicamp.
Right. And so let's take a look at some film of Strong. We love watching some cornerbacks. And again, we got time to discuss this type of stuff. So we're talking press jam. You see him bottom of the screen, jammed up on that receiver. You see that punch immediately with the inside hand, and then just that left hand. He immediately gets into phase and into the kitchen of that wide receiver and just squeezes him down the sideline. And then we talked about the poise. Hairston talked about poise and how he's adjusting at the NFL level. This, again, is a trademark of Strong. Look, as the ball's dropping in, look at him, look up, get the ball. He doesn't panic. He doesn't have that ball panic. He goes and makes a play at the catch point. It's something you see a ton on his film.
Yeah, the feel for when the ball is in the air, whether he's, reading the receiver or just knowing like the timing of routes and how they develop, he's got a really good sense of that. And you hit pretty much everything here. I love this is gonna sound so like nerdy or dumb. I love a good squeeze, like to the sideline, just that ability again, like you're just constricting everything. And because he's able to stay in phase and he's able to stay within that receiver, He's able to stay on top of him, get in his hip pocket right there, and just look how confident and comfortable right off the line. He gets that initial stab with the hand, moves his feet, doesn't. I like that he doesn't go with the two-hand jam. He doesn't lock his hips out. He goes with the one, stays with his man, rides him, squeezes him to the sideline, and then once he reads him look for the ball, he gets back on the ball. It's nice and early, it's nice and controlled, and we get an incompletion.
And this is really, when we're talking about that last clip with Hairston and Strong working together, I absolutely love this right here. This is taking it from the field to the meeting rooms and the drills to the field here against Miami. Bottom of the screen here. Again, watch the press jam. Boom. There's the punch. You see that left foot kick out. So now he's kind of outside of his frame. Receiver's coming back inside, but that punch made a difference. It really stymied that release by the wide receiver. He's not into the route stem quite yet, but then now he can punch again, stay in phase, flip those hips to the inside, and totally disrupt this quick game, which is what, Anthony? Something we talked about all offseason.
Yeah, the ability to stymie quick game and not give up that easy stuff underneath. And this is against Jacoby George for it's funny, I remember
your Hurricanes.
Yeah, I get against my Miami Hurricanes. I hate Virginia Tech so much just for years and years of being a Miami fan. But George is quick. He's got good long speed and he's got good quickness. He is a better athlete and with more twitch than Strong. So this is the type of player. Granted, Strong has him on some more size and physicality piece, but there's tons of space, as you've highlighted there. And so you've got tons of space, especially at the college level, because you've got those wider hashes. So George has all this space to work on the slant. If Strong doesn't get good contact on George and George gets out of this clean, he can start to get into full stride because there's so much space that you highlighted there. Yeah. So it's super important. And even more so, too, the defense gets sucked in by the run angle, which they should, because Damian Martinez is such an awesome running back, and Miami's run game was so good. If they had any defense, they would have easily gone to the playoffs.
Oh, we struck a nerve, didn't we?
I'll never get over it. Okay, it's that conversation for another time. But that technique matters a lot, and those punches, the ability to disrupt the wide receiver, stay on top of the route. And then, Cam Ward flings it in there thinking that George is going to continue his route. Strong almost gets an interception on this one. And that's even part of it too. Like, he closed this off so much that George is thinking, okay, he's got leverage of me on the top. Let me kind of spin out and try and work back to the corner. And try and do something different. But Cam Ward is still thinking he's staying on the initial route and the initial thing that they had going on. So it's just another example of how much Strong kind of disrupted this play altogether just by having good technique, just by being able to cause some disruption against a quicker, faster wide receiver.
All right, here's a play down the field. That poise, once again, playing it up through the pocket from the line of scrimmage. Again, attaching, staying in phase. And now his long speed is questionable at times. And you'll see there's some separation here. But again, as that ball's dropping in, look at him just pop those eyes up and then play it through the pocket for the pass breakup. Tremendous poise by Strong on this play.
Yeah, this one, you'll see him get beat from time to time in the tape when, if he doesn't get that jam, or even if guys are just trying to straight out burn him past the line, he doesn't have the most recovery speed. But if that ball is slightly underthrown and it becomes a play at the catch point, he is comfortable kind of running some things down. And this is a nice one. Doesn't get the cleanest jam, right? We don't see a stab and a nice transition, almost gets run by a little bit, but look at him look back, locate the football right after he sees the eyes of the wide receiver. His body language is indicating to me that the ball's up in the air. So let me get my eyes back right there. And then calm, cool, collected punches right through the hands and gets a nice PBU after, potentially being outstepped a little bit earlier in the route.
Here's one that leads to another interception, top of the screen. That's zone awareness, that he's pressing and then he's bailing. Again, disguising coverage right to the snap. You see him come off of the guy going deep, and he sees the sail route by the guy inside, goes ahead and gets a piece of it, and it leads to an interception for the Tech defense.
Yeah, I was yelling at my TV. I literally remember this play like when it happened, because I just sometimes, I'm not even going to blame Cam Ward too much. Sees that outbreaker, what does he do? He sits on it. Like, this is technique. You're playing with the outside leverage. You let that seam route go, fall off, jump that out. Really nice play and a nice feel for zone, which I think is a good thing to show here, considering how much we've talked about all the press man, restricting the airspace. He still does have some zone coverage chops. This was a really nice one, too, that I also yelled at my TV.
Yes, this is another one. Press bail. You see him get out. You have, another vertical, 2 verticals. He's splitting it, and then to waste the last second, he peels off, speed turns, and goes and makes a play at the catch point. That's a
I
little
know.
sore spot with me.
It's still a sore spot for me, man. Like, and when I saw the back injury, I'm like, oh, that's why he fell. That made me
Yeah.
feel a little better because I'm like, okay, maybe that's what dinged him off the board.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But yeah, this is a nice one too. And again, something that is going to matter when you are playing zone at college, but especially in the NFL too, like that spatial awareness, that feel for routes that are trying to put you into conflict. Can you outs at the same time while not fully committing? This is a nice speed turn. He gets right on top of the ball, and then another play right at the catch point, uses his length.
Beautiful.
I like it. Yeah, I like how he punches right through the hands and gets the hand right on the ball. Like, don't try to just go through the midsection of the wide receiver. Go make a play on the ball, but make a play on the ball with physicality. Really nice from Dorian Strong there. Again, for a guy who relies on his technique because he needs to rely on his technique.
Yeah, no, it's been fun to watch some of that old film from those guys, it's including Strong. And again, we did a bunch of Hairston film,
Yeah.
after he was drafted. So we don't want to get too much into that again, but it was just cool, that dynamic, that
Mhm.
relationship between Strong and Hairston. And again, there wasn't much to glean when it came to on the field stuff, but little stuff like that after practice, working together. That's what you want to see. And from a Hairston standpoint, again, kind of getting some of that technique, but more importantly, it's one thing to be coachable from coaches. It's
Mm.
another to be selfless enough to get coaching from a guy that's on the same level as you. Yes, he has more experience, but getting from a teammate and being able to take that information while you guys are still competing, that is another level of coachable that is probably not really talked about enough.
Yeah, you could easily see Hairston, like, or a guy of that level trying to, like, big game somebody else. Like, yo, you're a late day 3 pick. Like, I'm the first round pick. Like, I don't need anything. I don't need to, like, listen to anything from you. And also, even going from the other side of it, too, right? Like, Dorian Strong needs to do everything he can to try and make this
Yeah.
team. And he's out here just being a good teammate to a guy who he maybe bonded with a little bit earlier in the draft process. So it's cool to see him trying to drop some gems onto Hairston. Hairston being willing to learn already right away, like you said, being coachable, not just from the coaches, but from, his teammates, and getting some extra time in to work. Like, it just shows a really good culture aspect and mental dynamic from
Totally.
both these guys. And it was, when the Bills picked Strong, it was so funny. I was like, that's such an archetype fit for the
Yep.
Bills. Like, that's just such the typical, like, okay, decent athlete. Oh, technique. Oh, like, culture guy. Oh, a ton of experience and a bunch of reps. Like, oh, that tracks. And so yeah, it's funny to see, those two types of corners coming into this grouping. And it's nice that they have a relationship already and are able to kind of learn off of one another, especially for someone who has a high ceiling like Max Hairston does.
It's the next segment I want to talk about. It started with Max Hairston again, and a quote that he had. Again, he was one of the guys that was interviewed after that first practice, but
Mm.
some of his quotes were just awesome. So here's one. He talks about the size on defense and guys like TJ Sanders, Deion Walker, and Landon Jackson. He says, I'm looking at a bunch of giants, and I feel good to know them giants are on my side. And that right there is really the epitome of what I think Bean did this offseason, whether it's free agency and the draft. For the entire offseason, all of us were like, you got to get a one tech, got to get a big one tech, got to get a big wide one tech that can, two gap. And while they did get a big one tech,
Mm.
it's not necessarily the
It's a
style that I
lie.
think the Bills fans wanted, but that's fine. It's almost like, guess what? Bean's like, I'll give you your one tech. I'll give you that big hulking D tackle that can play shade or play over a center, but he's going to play our style of
Yeah.
football, right? He's going to be attack oriented. He's going to be up the field. He's not taking on and eating up blockers play for play. He's going to be an attack oriented D tackle and Deion Walker, but him, Landon Jackson, TJ Sanders, reconstructing that D line.
Mm.
It's not just about, hey, they got to stop the run. We got to stack the box. No, it's not just about that. What they're doing now is like, okay, we have an archetype. We like these tall, long defensive linemen. We're gonna go get those guys and hopefully, their length and the ability to stack and shed, or their length
Mm.
and their ability to process, run the pass and disengage and go get the passer. Hopefully that length will not only allow them to defend the run and the pass, but also the height
Mm.
that they possess allows them to see and have better vision to the quarterback, better vision to the running back, so that they can process that much quicker.
Yeah, Landon Jackson listed at 6'6", and Deion Walker listed at 6'7" and 3/8. And Sanders
Nuts.
obviously isn't a small guy either, but he is compared to Jackson and Walker,
It's
who are just
crazy.
huge. You know what though? We still were close. Maybe they take Tyreek Williams. Like
I
Tyreek
know.
Williams said, if he's there at 30, maybe they take him.
Yep.
So we were close to kind of getting more of the prototypical one tech. But yeah, you hit it. It was so funny for them, like getting Walker. When they got him, all I tweeted was I just tweeted like ha 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 like a bunch because it was just such a funny like, oh, there's the big guy. And so many people
Yeah.
were like, oh, there's the big guy. And it's like,
Hmm.
no, he doesn't play like that big guy. Like
Right.
he is, which, oh God, these measurements are crazy. 6'7", 331 pounds for Deion Walker. So he's 99th percentile for height, 91st percentile for weight, 93rd percentile for wingspan, 83rd percentile for arm length, 88th percentile for hand size. But he plays like he wants to be TJ Sanders. Like
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
plays like he's a penetrating one gap shooter type of guy, despite that size. And yeah, just the body types that they brought in and that the defensive focus in general, but especially on the D line. Just some quotes from Brandon Beane throughout the different pressers and pieces through draft weekend. He said, quote, I didn't see us coming up short in games or in the playoffs on the offensive side of the ball. And then with specific reference towards the defensive line, he said, we wanted to be deep. We wanted to have a variety of skill sets and we want competition. I want it to be hard as well for any one of however many defensive linemen we keep on the 53-man roster. You can never have enough guys up front for the length of our season. Pun intended there for me with the length aspect, considering the guys that they drafted. They wanted a rotation of guys and they traded up for two out of the three
Hmm.
guys here with going up to get Sanders, going up to get Walker. Jackson kind of fell into their lap a little bit, depending on how high you think of Landon Jackson and the trade back and how it worked. But they really did continue what they did in free agency with the defensive line. And kind of, what we've talked so much about like the basketball lineup nature of the wide receiver room. They
Yep.
kind of have a little bit of that growing now with defensive line, with how, granted, like Jackson fits somewhat into the Rousseau mold and the archetype and the play style, but the body types and the skill sets of, you've got Ed Oliver, you've got Daquan Jones, you've got Ogunjobi, you've got TJ Sanders, you've got Bosa, you've got Hoyt, you've got Epinesa, you've got Rousseau, like all of these different body types, experience levels, play styles, how they can be used. You also still have Larry Ogunjobi and Hoyt's 6-game suspensions looming a bit.
Hmm.
So this gives you a little more firepower in mixing and matching the first 6 games of the season. It is, it's just been an interesting mix in how they've continued to address this group. And then the theme, of how it carried into this draft and the size and presence that you feel for each of the 3 guys that they drafted.
Yeah, that presence. I love Joe B from The Athletic. One of his quotes, read that. Listen to this. He talks about TJ Sanders. He says, Sanders is even bigger in frame, looks extremely quick moving laterally, which was we covered that time and time again. When bouncing off one blocker and attacking another, he gets on that second blocker very quickly, especially when he's doing those gap exchanges, those run stunts and going backdoor. He also said he also did a nice job of keeping the blockers away from his jersey, enabling him to stay clean enough to make those side-to-side moves. So laterally, that agility, something that we talked about prior to the draft, something that we talked about after they drafted him. But again, the size, that agility, they're still attack oriented. Think about this, guys. As much as we wanted as fans that nose tackle, and we want the Bills to stop the run, to get into those 3rd and longs. Last year, the average 3rd down for opposing offenses against the Bills was 3rd and 7.59. That was 5th. The Texans were ahead of them. The Lions, the Vikings, and Broncos. That was it. So they got teams into 3rd and long, but they had obviously some issues there. There's some obviously some explosive plays and whatnot, but that's why Brandon Beane, aside from knowing that this is a passing league, getting teams in the 3rd and long, that's why the Bills drafted guys that are attack oriented, guys that can go get the passer and affect the quarterback. That's why they went and got, big guys, again, big, long arms, tall, better vision on the quarterback and running back, but also guys that can use that stuff, use those traits and skills to get off blocks and to go get the running back, or get off blocks to go get the quarterback. So that is why Brandon Beane attacked the draft this way on the defensive side of the ball.
Did you say attack on purpose because you were trying to, be a little tongue in cheek there and maintain the theme of Brandon B?
No.
And he talked about it. At this point now, there's like so many different interviews and clips in my brain. I can't. Oh, I think it was maybe after they drafted TJ Sanders that night. He talked about, the value of inside rush and how it matters and how guys are paid. I think we talked a little bit about it when we did that show breaking down Sanders and Jackson in the film room, which you haven't watched. If you have not watched, please go back and check that out on the Cover One channel and in the film room feed. He talked about it like those guys are typically the ones that are paid. That, you can find more traditional one techs or run stopping guys for, they can be a bit more cost effective, or you can find them on the market. Those dudes who can provide inside rush, and that's the phrase that he kept using, inside rush. Those guys tend to be more valuable on the market. Those are the kind of guys you gravitate towards. And when you pair that with the ability to still penetrate, and I think that's even what it is with Sanders too, and what we liked about his game so much. It's not just inside rush. You feel that penetration style and that shooting ability and that trigger against the run as well, horizontally, but also upfield. Like, so he fits what they want from a stylistic standpoint, but he also just fits from the ability to still combat offenses against the run. Like, you can stop the run by, being stout and gumming the works up, or you can split a double team, or you can jump from one A gap to the other, from the A to the B, and beat a guy and get into the backfield like he does a lot. So it's interesting again to see them kind of building up the basketball lineup at defensive tackle while
literally
literally
height-wise is crazy.
It's nuts.
Bunch of power forwards running around.
Right? It's insane. And especially too, even funny too, with how much like a basketball player TJ Sanders is and how much that game is. There's all those little like tie-ins. But they've now assembled what hopefully should be a deep rotation on the defensive line. We'll see what happens with Walker and his back and weight stuff. And Bean's already alluded to it a bunch of how much he'll play or not play throughout the spring and summer and getting his body right. But they really did throw a lot of resources on the defensive line, and in some expected ways, but also in some newer, different kind of ways as well. It's really interesting to see how they've continued to address this spot.
Rod asked the question, don't linemen, both sides, take a few years to develop enough to make a big impact in games? I could see where that generalization can be true in a lot of cases, but you also got to remember the Bills rotate their guys. And there are specific situations that they are going to have these guys pegged for if they don't believe they're totally up to snuff early. But they're going to throw everything at them, obviously. But they're going to have certain plays that these guys can run, and they're going to continuously rotate these guys. So it's not like they're, taking an 80% snap share. So they're going to be rotating these guys, and it's going to be very limited situations, very planned out, strategically planned out situations for these guys to flourish.
Yeah, especially for Sanders, I think maybe has the biggest chance early on because of Ogunjobi's suspension. Like, maybe he functions in as defensive tackle 3, but if Ogunjobi was there, they'd be able to kind of wade him into the water a little bit easier. Jackson, you could have specific things for him. Like, you've got Rousseau, you've got Epinesa, you've got Bosa right there. Even with Hoyt having a suspension, you still have 3 bodies right there that are very capable ahead of him. And that makes it nice to, hey, Landon Jackson, just go be big and long and strong and go play the run a little bit. And then we'll kind of kick you in and do some different pass rush stuff. So that's a really good point there, Erik. It all. And again, things are always relative too, depending on the type of team. Like, if you're going to baptize somebody by fire and be like, hey man, we don't have any depth up there. Good luck. We need you to go on the field and play 80% right now. But yeah, you can kind of wade them into the water slowly a bit.
So another player that, the Bills drafted that there wasn't, again, much footage. You referenced a side-by-side clip of Hairston, I think, doing some drills with Hancock next to him. But Jordan Hancock, safety for the Bills. I think he'll be a safety, but they will, probably put him at nickel at times as well. I thought, I was starting to think about, like, okay, the transition for him. He played more nickel in college than he did at safety. But when I look at how he transitions and translates into this defense, and I do think it's a safety, but I started thinking, I'm like, it's kind of interesting how the nickel position in the Bills scheme, a lot of those responsibilities are also the same responsibilities that safeties have to carry. So when that nickel is detached, when Taron Johnson is not attached to the formation, he's out wide in the slot, who do you think's in the run fit? It's usually a safety coming down either from a one high look, or he's coming down post snap from depth. And I think that's why the transition for Hancock and his skill set and what he's really good at and taking angles to the ball, tackling. If you watch his film, he over communicates left and right with everyone. And again, he played that nickel position. As we always talk about, that position, especially in the Bills defense, that's the glue between the second level linebackers and the safeties on the back end and corners on the back end. And so I think a lot of what he does well will translate very good at the safety level, coming from playing most of his reps at nickel in college.
Yeah, they had an interesting rotation and usage at Ohio State. So you had Lathan Ransom, who was in this draft and is now an NFL player. Then you have Caleb Downs, who is arguably the best defensive player in all of college football going into this upcoming season, just nasty safety. And then you had Hancock. They would use Downs as kind of like, they would do a lot of cool Tampa 2 stuff. And so Downs would be that Tampa player or the pole runner and sitting there pre-snap or a 3-high look and then drop down as kind of like a robber bit. So, yeah. So Hancock would sometimes be, the split field safety. Sometimes he's traditional nickel and he's up in the face of, a trips bunch and he's jamming somebody and carrying. So you would get a lot of different work from him. But I liked his skill set on tape the more I went back, and I'm interested to see what he kind of becomes. Does he take over the Cam Lewis type of role where it was like nickel and a little bit of safety? Bean talked about him a bit. He said, he's going to be a safety and a nickel. We'll split those reps. He said, he was less of a safety at Ohio State, but we've seen enough from him that he'll play there at safety. And I think that's the play as well. And just good size, 6'1", almost 200 pounds, good testing measurables. Like you said, though, the communication, the tackling ability, the usage in Ohio State's defense, I think really kind of gave him a good baseline.
Yes.
For
high
a multitude.
IQ, definitely.
And for a multitude of roles in the NFL level, which gives you a higher opportunity to succeed. I don't think he's the right now, like if you had to plug him in and run single high safety looks with him, you're like, oh, but he can do some split field stuff. He can do the nickel stuff. He can blitz. He can fit the run. He's a responsible tackler. He's a forceful tackler, especially if you're having him come down as like that buzz safety or that robber a bit. And yeah, just it's nice to get a guy with championship pedigree on a defense that was loaded with talent, and watching him be a voice back there is a really cool thing.
All right, let's go to the next guy. There are some good quotes on Jackson Hawes.
You said it, and I didn't even blink. I was like, "Yep, Spencer Hawes."
Anthony and I were talking pre-show how we keep calling Jackson Hawes Spencer Hawes. So tight end, obviously he's known for being a blocker, one of the best, if not the best, tight end blocker in this draft class. Alex Brasky had a good quote on Hawes. He says Hawes put on an impressive pass catching display during the minicamp practice, hauling in a number of receptions all over the field, a few of which were of the athletic variety. So there were supposedly some catches and that were away from his frame. He had to elevate a little bit and make some nice catches with his hands. And it's not something you saw a bunch of on his film, but that doesn't mean he that's scouting 101. Just because you didn't see it on film doesn't mean he can't do it. Sometimes that's the scheme. Sometimes that's, the personnel. There could be injuries or whatever. There's a ton of factors. But when it came to his film, he was a hell of a blocker. And we're talking inline, detached. We're talking on the move. They would move him at the snap, kind of like what we saw with Alec Anderson against the Niners.
Yes.
He's coming across the formation. He's executing that split floor sift block across the formation, cutting that end man on the line of scrimmage.
That blast motion, like right as the snap's about to. Yeah.
And so he was doing a lot of that in their gap and counter tray type runs. And so he wouldn't just target those guys and make those, make the contact and drive them off the line, which he did displace a lot of guys. But he had some nastiness to him.
Yeah.
He is a finisher. And so I'm excited about this tight end, hopefully, becomes tight end 3. I'd like to hear your thoughts on, some of the quotes that you heard from camp and stuff you saw from camp and obviously his film.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for, and we've talked about on the show, I've said a whole bunch. I'm a big believer in like run the football, stop the run. So if you can give me, I don't want someone who's just completely siloed, but I like a bit of, more of a traditional Y type of tight end, somebody who's just a little throwback and just going to kind of murk dudes. And you see that from him. What I like about his style as a blocker is you see him being able to function against a variety of body types and a variety of skill sets. It's not just, oh, okay, well, he can fit up on a safety or a smaller linebacker. He's murking Mikes, he's murking Wills, he's taking edges, like he's cracking safeties. A really nice quote that I had from Justin, who works for the Draft Network. He did an interview with Jackson Hawes, and the quote from Hawes is, "I have a fascination with the movie Gladiator. We as people enjoy watching violence in appropriate settings. That's one reason I really love football. The human is the greatest opponent you can have." And that just translates to what you've seen in some of these clips and the type of player that he is. He is physical. He's violent. He brings his hands. He brings his body. And once he gets into you, he is trying to bury you. He's not just looking to like, okay, cool, I'll obstruct you and stay in the way. He wants to hit you and he wants to bury you. And I love that in a tight end 3.
Yeah, and you said it, his hand placement. He always gets his hands inside the frame.
Yes.
And then he's running his feet consistently. And the thing when he makes these blocks on the move, he reads the incoming defender so well. So there are times where, you have to read as a blocker, you have to read, am I going to kick this guy out or am I going to seal him inside? He does a great job of processing that on the fly and then executing it with precision. And then again, with some finish. I love his film as far as, blocking. I remember it was it was reminiscent of Tommy Tremble a few years ago, of the kill shots that he was offering on his film. He was just murking dudes left and right in the run blocking game. And Hawes in a lot of his film was very similar, just very, very good technique as a run blocker, very good, body positioning, very good finish and strength at the point of attack. And a lot of the runs, if you're following Hawes on film, the runs were going behind him.
Yeah, he was very much made me think of a couple years ago when we did the scouting for the Dolphins, and it was like wherever Alec Ingold goes is where the ball goes. And Hawes was that for Georgia Tech. Wherever Hawes goes, that's where the ball goes. And for a team, for those who don't know, Georgia Tech, heavy run the football type of team. It's a lot of gap stuff. Like their MO was run the football. They put teams in hell with it because of their commitment to it and the variety. And Hawes was a legitimate weapon for them as an inline guy, just someone you could line up next to a tackle and he could wash down a defensive end or base block and kick out an end or climb up to the second level, seal guys inside, bash them inside. But also some of this stuff like we talked about that you guys are seeing here on the tape, some of that move stuff, you can have him as kind of like an H-back, send him in that blast motion and he can kick out an edge or he can climb up. And so the ability to kind of let him function on some counter stuff, or I don't know, does he maybe step in for some of the 6 offensive lineman stuff? And instead of Alec Anderson, and now it's him because he can pass protect a little bit like we showed in that clip. And even from the athleticism standpoint, again, he's not this athletic marvel, especially from a long speed standpoint, but from an explosion metric standpoint, 81st percentile in the broad jump, 67th percentile in the vert, and an 87th percentile 10-yard split. He's got some short area juice, like 5 to 10 yards. You can see him get out. If he's running that, that OTB route, the over the ball route from a tight end spot, he can get into the route quickly. He can turn, he can sit. He's not somebody you're going to send on wheels and he's going to outrun dudes, but he can work between 0 to 10 yards as a pass catcher. You can use him on slide routes in play action, and that ties well into those split zone sift blocks where he can just murk dudes. I really like his skill set, especially considering how Dawson Knox has rounded into or developed into a more well-rounded tight end and become a good blocker. That's still an area of opportunity for Kincaid. I like dropping someone with Hawes' skill set into that tight end room, considering how more pass-focused or soft skill focused the tight end room is. Now you get more of a monster and a mauler who's got some short area explosion that maybe can benefit in the pass a little bit.
Yeah, and it's a little different approach. When they had Quentin Morris, he was a former wide receiver that they had to teach the block, and he actually developed really well.
He did a very good job
in that
considering
area.
where he came from. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
now you're kind of flipping the script. Now you got a run blocker, and now you got to mold him into a guy that can, again, get open in the underneath areas, be that outlet. But he does open up some personnel grouping stuff where if you want to run more 13 personnel, he can not only block for the run, block as against the pass, as a pass blocker, but also again, check out in the routes, get out into routes. So it opens up 13 personnel a little more.
Who needs wide receivers when all you're going to do is go 6 offensive linemen and 13 personnel all day and run the ball down people's throats and go play action?
Right. And so now you can pivot, right? Like you said, you can take that 260 plus snaps with 6
Cool.
offensive linemen last
Yeah.
year. Now you
13%, I
can
think, roughly.
yeah,
Yeah, it was
yeah,
a
you can
ton.
take some of that down a little bit, and now you can put obviously if he remains healthy and works his way on the roster and everything,
Yeah.
now you do open up some of the personnel grouping stuff and make the defense have to guess a little more. So that'll be interesting to watch his development. Much like we saw Quentin Morris do, it'll be interesting to watch his development going forward. Another guy that stood out, and I see John Robert in the chat talking about him. So I do want to get to wide receiver Kaden Prather. Sal Capaccio had a good quote on Prather. He said he had a great day, really solid routes, got open, and made some impressive catches. What are your thoughts on his film and some of what you heard out of rookie minicamp?
Yeah, let me go pulling up my evaluation on him. I was surprised with some of his stem work.
Yeah.
Like there's some gear changes, some deception. He had a route against USC where he did that. They're going from left to right. He's the X to the top of the
Yep.
screen, and he did kind of like that the Josh Downs like walk thing a little bit in the
Yeah,
middle of the
halfway through
stem.
the route, he kind of changed the pace of it, and like he was kind of almost like almost stopped
Yes.
and then accelerated.
Yep.
And then he did a little jab
In-break.
outside and
Yeah,
break.
it came back in and separated, and I was like, "Oh, that made me perk up." And I was like, "That's really cool from a 7th
And
round wide receiver."
he didn't get the ball, and he
No.
just looked at the DB and was like, "I had
Yes,
you. I
exactly. You
had
know
you." Yeah.
exactly what he
Yeah.
turned back around and pointed like, like I got you, dude.
Yeah.
Like, and that kind of made me perk up a bit. So I like some of that. I like some of the deception in his stems, some of the gear changes. Not a very explosive dude, but he does have some suddenness that shows in the breaks and in his releases. Good body control. When I started out with him, I thought he had amazing hands. Like he's plucking the ball left and right, really good hands catcher. And then as you go through a little more, some of the games I saw, some drops that I didn't like. I didn't know if he got caught. There was one against Northwestern. I don't know if he lost the ball in the lights, but he should have came down with it.
Yeah.
Another kind of ugly drop against Rutgers, but plucks the ball. He is a hands catcher. I like some of his release work as well. You see him be able to lean into the size and fluidity that he has as an athlete. He's able to throw some corners by because he does have some size. He's like a height, weight, speed kind of guy, as Brandon Bean alluded to him as. And he's not a big yak guy and a big like shake and wiggle guy. He can make the first guy miss or, get past that first guy trying to get him, but he's not a huge like, oh, let's just get him the ball in space and let him do work. But overall, for a 7th round wide receiver, I thought he had a decent amount of eggs in a multitude of baskets, and he had a couple flashes that I really liked and was happy with. Again, especially for a 7th round wide receiver, dropping him into this bucket.
That USC film, obviously his best game
Yep.
last year, but I thought what was interesting about him starting early in the route stem, I thought he did a great job of varying his releases. Here in a second, I thought in that changing your release, you're running the same route, but changing your release to get into that route stem can help when you see corners that are in your face and trying to play press jam and mirror man coverage. Because again, you're making them think for a second, which, if you're doing a move one way or the other, and then you're changing up the next time around, maybe he opens his frame a little bit more. Maybe he punches with the wrong hand, and now you're into your route and you can get away from that jam, because there are some times where, as big as he is, he does get jammed up at the line of scrimmage. I thought you mentioned it with that USC route. He does know how to use his route pacing. He does know how to change speeds going into a break, halfway into a break. Like he does know how to do that. So that'll be fun to watch that develop. But I do think he double catches a lot. He had 1 drop last year. He had 5 the year before, 6 the year before that, and 2. So
that one drop, quote unquote, last year, I thought was a bit misleading because he had some other ones that, like, I guess didn't get a credit to. Yeah.
It's Gabe Davis again. And I hate to bring that up because I know it's a hot topic right now with Gabe being a free agent, but the way Prather won with his size, his ability as not being super fast, but ability to still get open down the field, sneakily get open down the field. It reminded me of Gabe. And I'm going to bring up this play, a few plays from Prather. Here is a USC game. So this is something Gabe used to do time and time again at UCF. So you're seeing him at the bottom of the screen, and let's see here. There we go. All right. And just watch right foot up, left foot back. It's a wide split too. Watch how instead of coming and bringing this foot up so then he can create that two-way go, he executes what we call a gather step. And so instead of, again, coming to a stagger, you're going to see this left foot go here to push off to go and release outside. And that movement may seem like it's a little extra, but that
Mm.
can confuse DBs because, again, they're expecting, as we saw in that Hairston and Dorian Strong interaction, that right foot up or left foot up, that changes how you release and
Mm.
how you get to your release. And you see that gather step, and you see him get outside, and there's some separation there. Now, he doesn't get the ball there, but again, this is something Gabe used a bunch at UCF and at the NFL level. And I saw it from Prather. And there's that little
Yes.
that at the top of the route right there. And look at that separation. He can easily get open down the field with stuff like
Man,
that.
his this is gonna probably sound so homerish. Like his best reps for me are ones where he probably didn't get the ball. Like he's got some
True.
good route stuff where I was like, oh, and then I was like, throw him the ball. Like there were so many times where I wanted to see him get it. And yeah, you talk about that release, that gather step. He does that a lot. Like where
Yeah.
he just dips the shoulder and he goes by guys. I like that. I like seeing the variety in that. Good call on him needing that and using that, because even against some smaller corners, when he gets like, someone will get a good jam on him in his chest, and it almost kind of like it shocks him more than I would like, considering his size and
Yeah.
frame. So him being able to stay fluid and clean on the line is nice. And he wields that gather step and a variety of release moves to stay clean. And yeah, I love that. Oh, I'm throttling down. Just kidding. Psych. And then he gets open.
Yeah.
Like I like that ability to separate downfield because of the deception in his stem.
So here's that varying release. Same game, top of the screen. He's running the go. He's releasing outside, right foot up. What's he do this time? Boom, comes to a gather step. Now he can break outside. He can break inside. He again breaks outside. And then you see him create separation as he gets down the field. And that stagger, while it didn't create as much separation explosively in the release, you still see him. He's able to duck under the hand just a little bit of the DB. And then they're right there. There's some physicality, chops down on the hand as that DB tries to get in his kitchen, and then eyes up, and you see him on the back shoulder of the throw go up and get the ball. Kind of a double catch again, but make a play against USC.
It's 100% a double catch again. He like 1,000. You see it more on this end zone angle. Like he goes up and gets it, which is sweet. And then you're like, oh, go up, get it at double catch as
So
he goes
often,
down.
man.
Yeah, right. And I like this one. The USC game was the first one I watched, so it got me excited. This was one of the reps that I think it's early on in this game, like one of the first
Right.
ones I really like. I just like that dip in the shoulder. Like you said, I like the hand fight, chop down that arm. You're not going to stay attached to me. You're not going to get a feel for me. Let me just break this off right here and start to get clean.
And you know what's funny is as he chops down right there, he did that several times in this game where the guy was actually in off coverage. So the guy wasn't even in phase with him. And as he was coming up to that collision point and closing that space, he like put his hand up like he was gonna chop, like, hey, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna catch. So he kind of messes with the brain of DBs in various ways that it's actually kind of funny.
Yeah, he ties some stuff in. If he beats somebody or threw somebody by earlier, he'll fake that and then he not throttle down and go and try and beat you vertically with it. And that got me excited again for a 7th round dude. Like the processing or the way he kind of set guys up is what got me excited. And then I know he double catches it there, but I was like, okay, go up, like use your size, go up, get the football, bring it down. Like that was a nice route there. It's just I gotta stop. We got a super chat. Carl, thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for the super chat. Carl says, I know it's early, but I'm starting to get really excited about this team. Could it be our offense gets better and the defense becomes a strength? And then he asks us, where can you see a weakness? Is it special teams, kicker, punter? Okay, so we got a variety of pieces here. So Erik, let's break it down. So do we think the offense maybe got a smidge better? And do we think the defense can become a strength for this team? And where do you see a weakness on this team?
Yeah, I mean, the weakness, I would say, it has to be special teams. I do expect the defense to step their game up. I do think that they're going to play. I just feel a different style of attack coming this year with this defense and the pieces.
They better,
given
given the players that they brought in. Like
Exactly.
it can't just be the
investments,
quo.
whether you're talking financially or draft assets, it should be better. And I don't know if they'll become the strength, but I do expect them to step up in moments at more times than not than prior years. I think they have the pieces to attack on early downs, but they also have the pieces to really go after the quarterback on those obvious pass rush situations. And I think they have those pieces that can finish and close some of those third downs to get the defense off the field and Josh Allen back on the field.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. I think, so could it be our offense gets better? I think a lot of that is going to be dependent upon how well Josh Palmer functions in, how much better Keon Coleman is, and then a healthy Dalton Kincaid. But I do think there's a pretty reasonable chance that the offense is better. Year 2, Keon Coleman. You get a full offseason and year of Josh Palmer, which I think can be better than the midseason Cooper acquisition. And then he was banged up a little bit and how that functioned. I think Palmer helps as that basketball lineup for the wide receiver room continues. A healthy Dalton Kincaid matters a lot. And even if that doesn't happen, yeah, fair. And even if you don't have that, you've still just got a really good offensive line and a really good run game, and you can just run the hell out of the ball. So like, I'm going to be very careful with this and no jinx. I'm not really worried about the offense because they have a thing that just translates well. Like there is no like, okay, we got to scout the Bills run game. They're not doing anything like schematically crazy. They just have good players and a good sound level of execution and good coaching. And they can vary up their concepts and beat you in the run game from the spread or from heavy, condensed, whatever you want, they can get you. So, but I do think based on those little variables, the offense definitely could be better this year. The defense, I'm hoping is better, just considering the level of investment. And then the players they brought in, to Erik, to your point, I expect some of a schematic shift, and I'm hoping for that. Where I see a weakness, I'm still going to drill down on, I think they can still get displaced in their spine just because of the size of everybody, but I think they can mitigate that with game script and play style elements. So it's going to be, and scheme. So it's going to be a bit of kind of like just how they fit.
You can also, like we talked about in the film room several times, is now they have guys like Benford and Hairston, whoever they start out at corner, that they can just leave and on an island, let them go cover who's out there and disconnect. We always talk about marrying the pass rush and coverage, but there are times where you need to disconnect. You need to put more assets to stop the run. Now they can do that. They can lock those guys up. Don't worry about them. Go, have those guys just man for man them up, and now they can disconnect the front seven and go stop the run if they need to, or go, if you have a mobile quarterback, now you have to do, you have to account for everyone. You don't have to worry so much about giving up too many explosive plays because you have guys that you can rely on the outside, theoretically.
Yeah,
theoretically. So I think that is what is interesting, because the conversation has always been, hey, pass rushing coverage and marrying them together so that they're complementing each other. We talk about it all the time every year and almost every week in the game.
Yeah.
But there are times you have to disconnect. And I don't think they have had that quite the last couple of years. And so that'll be interesting to watch unfold as, camp and OTAs and all that stuff starts, and we start to see how things start to shake out.
Yeah, we talked about a little bit when they drafted Hairston, like the opportunity of, okay, you didn't increase, how stout you are on the interior, but if Hairston works out theoretically, like you hope he does, now you've got two corners on the outside that you're comfortable playing more, whether it's like true man from a cover one perspective or, cover three, but those guys are essentially on islands out there. Yeah. You can feel comfortable being like, you know what? We're just going to put more bodies in the box. We're going to spin a safety down right on the snap or keep a safety down initially. And we're going to operate kind of like how we did against Detroit, where we're going to use run blitzes and numbers to gap out and beat the run. And we can trust our corners on the outside. And that's a way that, okay, they didn't add Tyleik Williams or Alfred Collins or DJ Jones, Dare to Dream, but they can still get after the quarterback from the interior. They still have those inside rush guys that can affect the run from a penetration standpoint. And then they can use numbers to mitigate some of the, that lack of stoutness and feel comfortable with those numbers in the box because of what they have on the outside.
So thank you, Carl, for that super chat. Great question. Brad has one for us as well. There's been a lot of hype and excitement, but do you think $2.5 million guaranteed is enough of an investment to predict Elijah Moore making the 53-man roster? I don't like to get into the financials of that, Anthony, but what are your thoughts on the player and where he fits in the Bills offense altogether?
I hadn't watched a lot of Elijah Moore since Ole Miss, like since he came out. I was pleasantly surprised with what he did with his Cleveland tape. Like there's some good deception. There's some good feet kind of getting in.
I thought you were going to say what he did with really bad quarterbacks. I honestly thought you were going in that direction. I was like, oh, he's about to nail the freaking nail down there. Like, oh my God. I thought
it was not great. Between Watson,
he's not wrong.
No, yeah, that's not wrong. But some of the flashes were really nice. I think it's more for me, no disrespect to like the wide receiver room. I just don't think this is a room where anybody like has a spot that's like, aside from like Khalil Shakir, like you can make a case for snap shares varying amongst everybody there. If Hollins had come back, I would have been very confident, like from a snap share perspective, like Shakir and Hollins. We know what Hollins can do as a blocker and did some stuff as a pass catcher. So I think those like roles are locked. But I do think Moore has a really good shot. Like you got to see what Keon Coleman looks like in year 2. I think Palmer is a very much a lock for this team. Curtis Samuel last year, I'm still going to kind of hang my head on this a bit. Before he hurt his toe in training camp, he was looking great and he got used in a multitude of ways in training camp.
Yeah.
The first couple days and first couple weeks in camp, he was the move guy. He was the adjuster. He was used to create leverage in a variety of ways for this offense, and he was getting the ball, and then he dings his toe up like the last week of camp or preseason, and it impacted him throughout the entirety of the first half of the year. And then crazy, he starts to get healthier towards the back end. Now we see him getting all this work in the back end. So I think there's a shot for Moore to kind of win a wide receiver spot in terms of wide receiver 5. We're going to see kind of what competition looks like, but I do think, however you want to slice it up, Shakir, Coleman, Samuel, and Palmer are pretty solid in that grouping for like what a top 4 looks like. And then I think Moore has a really, really, really good chance to win a wide receiver 5 unless they just want to keep 4.
I'm trying to temper my expectations because I do think his skill set and the context surrounding his play, his first few years in the league, I think his skill set could really work with Josh Allen and the Bills offense.
Yeah.
Especially if you're talking much like we saw with Samuel, you're seeing man coverage, you're seeing single high coverages, and he's running these crossing routes.
Yep.
He's obviously very fast, but he also has some really deceptive route stem running.
Yes.
Like a very deceptive
some of the stuff like
step.
when he's running like an out and he gives some shifty body language to make you think, oh, you're breaking inside. Psych, and
he's out of the break. Immediately out of the break. So quick route drops, routinely fools the corners, and eats up their cushion. And so I'm trying to temper my expectations because I do think that he could have a really nice season and work his way into a bigger contract with Josh Allen at the helm. And so I just love his quickness and his ability to run away from people. And, when they want to run some of those mesh concept versus man, he can run away from guys.
Yeah.
Now he does have some ball security issues. Sometimes he kind of takes his eyes off the ball in traffic. I think he struggles with reading zone coverages, but again, in man coverage situations, I like having his skill set on top of Curtis Samuel, as you mentioned, 2 guys that I think could really help the Bills in man coverage situations in 2025.
Yeah, and that all of a sudden, if he wins a spot there, I think his skill set just dropped in general with Palmer's ability to kind of operate from a precision standpoint and win in the intermediate and underneath, but he can get vertical with some deception and fool you a bit and get on top of you. You've got Keon Coleman and what he is and what he's been, and then Shakir, who emerged last year, Samuel, what he looked like when healthy, and now Elijah Moore. Now you've added another speed element, another, some yards after catch potential, some athleticism, some inside outside versatility. You could get really creative with him. I'm just thinking of, say you got 4 receivers on the field and Palmer's the receiver by himself. And imagine you've got a trips bunch and it's Shakir, Samuel, and Elijah Moore. You just throw any one of those guys in motion and all of a sudden you change leverage and you change possibilities a little bit and who you create releases for and how it changes coverage. And I do think from an athleticism profile, it does have me a bit excited. And I think he could easily be wide receiver 5. I know some people are like, oh, he's immediately the 3rd best receiver on the team. We'll see kind of what that means. And I think a lot of it for all the receivers, a lot of it's going to be dependent on the jump that Keon Coleman makes, because I think they want him to get a higher snap share. It's just a matter of if he earns it and claims it.
Yeah, and then learning a new offense for him, right?
Yeah.
More specifically, learning a new offense. Most of the guys already have been in this offense and getting on the same page with Josh. A lot of times that is the most important thing.
Fair.
Can he read more coming in and out of breaks? Are they on the same page? That is something that takes some time to develop. And you hear Josh Allen talk about how important that is to his game and his trust in a wide receiver or tight end. Time and time again, every year you hear that. It's usually one of the buzzwords that you hear or storylines you hear as soon as training camp starts. So that is where, I'm trying to temper my expectations on Moore, but I do think that he could have a very good season if he's able to pick up on the offense get on the same page with Josh Allen going forward into 2025.
Yeah, the athleticism profile is still there. Like the guy that was coming out of Ole Miss, you see the explosion, you see the juice, you see the athleticism. Like that always has value for any
Mhm.
offense, but especially for a group like the Bills that, could use more explosion and more verticality and that presence and what it could mean. Yeah, I'm excited for it. It made receiver a nice fun competition. Like I
Yeah.
think we got some fun competition on the defensive line, fun competition at safety, like
Yeah.
some spots that like starting jobs are up for grabs. And then receiver was kind of like, okay, because come preseason, the guys at the top of the depth chart, like Khalil Shakir is not going to get a ton of work in the preseason games, but maybe Elijah Moore is seeing a ton of
Mhm.
snaps. You're kind of seeing what he can do, let alone the camp battles and all that kind of stuff. And see John, throwing out a mention for Shavers. Yeah, Shavers had a nice, very long touchdown last year. We'll
Yeah.
see if he can be the prince that was promised. All of a sudden becomes a spot to potentially watch for a little bit come training camp. Erik, as we look forward towards this offseason, so rookie mini camp, and we've talked about this a bit. Where is your head at? What are you focused on going forward? Is there anything that's kind of sitting in the forefront of your brain around this Bills team or around this roster as the 2025 season starts to inch closer week by week?
No, I'm just like I said, I'm still catching up on some of the guys towards the bottom of the roster, and so trying to still acquire some of that film to kind of catch up and see what they have to offer the team. And so as I still get kind of get back into the groove again, make sure to check out obviously our social media profiles. We post a bunch of film, a bunch of notes and nuggets when it comes to film. We're watching on film and any transactions that happen. But again, thanks for all the support. It's been a busy off season, a
Hmm.
lot of change for this team, and so we're trying to stay on top of all of the work that Brandon Beane and this team has given us. And so we do appreciate you guys always supporting us, always sharing by word of mouth, sharing the links for whether it's YouTube or it's Spotify. I mean, we're trying to bring you guys as in-depth content as we can, but sometimes Brandon Beane likes to keep us on our toes, and so we're doing a little catch up right now. But again, thanks for hanging out with us today. I know it's a little different time frame and time slot, but we appreciate everyone joining us today live.
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody who joined us on this, live Monday afternoon. Sometimes we'll record on Monday afternoons, but offline, and then we'll upload it later. It was cool to see all the engagement and the attendance with us as we went live here on a Monday afternoon. I feel like everybody's still like, it was Mother's Day yesterday. We don't feel like working. All right, cool. Let's throw this show on. Like, had
Yeah,
to tap out early for the
yeah.
day. So we appreciate you folks who joined us live. If you didn't join us live, that's cool too. Thank you very much for watching, listening, downloading, whatever form or fashion your episode consumption comes in. Like Erik mentioned, we are greatly, greatly thankful for and appreciative of it. If you're watching here on YouTube, whether live now or later, please, 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 and thank you, drop a like on this video. Likes are the lifeblood of these streams here on YouTube. So please drop a like here on YouTube if you have not already. Turn on notifications for the Film Room playlist here on YouTube. Subscribe to the Cover One channel and check out the variety of content we have across the board, across the brand and channel pretty much every single day of the week, especially once we get into things in season. If you're listening on one of the podcasting apps or platforms, rate, review, subscribe. Those things are all tremendously helpful. And also, as Erik mentioned, sometimes just word of mouth means a lot. So if you know another Bills fan or a football fan or somebody who loves Landon Jackson or Max Hairston, whatever have you, whatever content we provided, we appreciate you folks sharing it on social or just word of mouth, telling somebody about it, friends, family, loved ones, whatever you got. We appreciate it tremendously. Erik, anything else on your mind? Parting words before we say goodbye to the people?
And no, yes, I actually had a little nugget for you guys. As training camp approaches, I don't know if you guys remember, but Sal Capaccio and I did a podcast last year called Guide to the Gridiron. It was more of like football 101, where we kind of explain things, slow things down a little bit. We're gonna expand on that a little bit. We're gonna rebrand it a little bit, but Sal and I will be doing a podcast usually on Mondays or the day or two after the games in season. And we're going to expand not just on, the X's and O's and definitions and glossary type stuff, but also, you're going to hear our opinions and reviews on the game. It's going to be cool because obviously he's on the sideline. Obviously he's at all the pressers. And there are going to be times where like, hey, maybe we're watching the game and I see something and I'm like, hey, you should ask about this, and maybe it leads to an awesome question, an awesome response. And then vice versa, he could say, I heard this and I saw this on the sideline during the game, blah, blah, blah. And then I look into it and I find something cool on film. So we have some cool ideas and segments set up for that podcast. Again, it's probably going to drop right around training camp, but keep your eyes peeled for that one. For Sal Capaccio from WGAR. And I will be starting a podcast or re-upping our podcast from last year.
I was going to say, yeah, re-upping.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, make sure to check that out if you have not already. And that'll do it for us in this episode of the Cover One Film Room. Again, rate, review, subscribe, like, word of mouth, all of that kind of stuff. Tomorrow night, I'll be going live for Disguise coverage. Kendall Mursky will be joining me, and we will be diving into Dalton Kincaid. A lot of people have a lot of thoughts on Dalton Kincaid, good and some bad. We will be diving into him and juxtaposing his play style, skill set, and schematic usage with Trey McBride, Sam Laporta, and Brock Bowers, because those are still a lot of guys, young tight ends that he gets compared to a lot. So tune in for that episode of Disguise coverage. You've got the air raid hour later tonight because it's Monday. I'm still thrown off because we're live on a Monday. I'm trying to go through everything in my head. And then, I got Under Review with Joe DeRosa tomorrow night at 7:30. And then Cover One Buffalo with Greg and Aaron Wednesday at 9. Appreciate you folks. Enjoy the rest of your Monday afternoon and your Monday evening. If you live in Buffalo, it's beautiful outside. Go get a run in, go play outside. Or if you're like me, go get some ice cream. Eric, that was for you. I'm going to get some ice cream later.
You rub it in all the time.
Enjoy the rest of your Monday, folks. We appreciate you, and we hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and staying safe. Be kind to one another. Take care of one another. We'll see you when we see you. Godspeed. And as always, go Bills.